3 miles ago, Keith felt like he was dying. There was not a single thing in his body that didn't ache. His mind had been bored to tears and exhausted for hours. But 1 mile from the finish, he felt all the adrenaline and all the excitement. The prospect of stopping come flooding to him, pumping through his veins with renewed vigor and sending a spark to his steps. He didn't jog fast. He didn't think he could, but damn if he didn't jog with purpose. It was dark now. The 3 bands on his arm, a heavy weight, the silver gold stick necklace they gave him, as his last loop wrapped around his waist. The streets in town were dead now. People walked around, headed back to their hotels or homes, going out to restaurants, but no one sat along the sides of the road anymore. They would all be near the finish. He saw several athletes with their transition bags and bikes, finisher medals catching light around their backs, and silver blankets wrapped around their shoulders. He was envious of them, but he was also fueled more than ever to just finish. He didn't know where he stood in the pack. He didn't know if he was in the faster half or the slower half. He didn't really care. There were a couple of runners around him, but none of them were passing him. He wasn't passing anyone. They all seemed to shuffle onward at a pace that was a little faster than it used to be. The lights got brighter as he neared the finish. He could hear the music blasting, hear the announcer's echoing voice, hear the cheers. He felt in his blood. His mind was a mantra of finish, 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 so much so that he nearly didn't notice the man was standing by, who jogged up beside him as he passed. "Looking good, little bro." He nearly tripped over his own gut feet. "Shiro?" Near them stopped. He didn't think they could. Shiro grinned. "How you feeling?" "Dead." "Same." "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you have already finished?" He shrugged, smiled, turning sheepish. "Maybe." "How long have you been waiting?" Not sure. "Maybe 20 minutes? 30? Not sure." He groaned. "You're ruining your time." "I don't care about my time. I'm not here to get a new PR. I'm here to spend time with you." He blamed the prickling at the corners of his eyes and on the fact that he was dead-ass tired. "You're an idiot. Maybe you love me." That last half of a mile was the best he had felt all week. They reached for the chute, lined on both sides by the portable and linkable metal fences. People hung over edge them. There were signs. There were bleachers lining the sides. 2 mounds of people and faces and flailing limbs and the flashing cameras. There was so much noise, too much noise. It all blended and swelled together, wrapped on the beat of a song he couldn't identify. All he could do was run side by side with Shiro, grinning at the finish line. With its large inflatable archway that read Iron Man loomed ahead of them. He didn't even try to find the faces of their friends in the crowd. It was too thick, too chaotic, and his headspace was too cluttered. He'd never be able to spot them. In that moment, despite the thousands of spectators and hundreds of cameras, Keith was alone with his brother, just two of them together, moving toward the same goal. He felt invincible. The only thing that cut through the din and cacophony, the sound of an announcer's voice. "Takashi Shirogane and Keith Kogane, congratulations! You are an Iron Man." Shiro grabbed Keith's hand as they crossed the finish line, holding up their hands as the automatic camera flashed. Keith felt his heart swell. What came after that was a blur. Like all other athletes, they were almost rushed through a similar line of people. There were tables set up along the sides, creating another sort of tunnel they were shuffled through. People in volunteer shirts shoved things on them into their hands, pushing them along as other athletes finished. He kept Shiro in his peripheral, but otherwise just let faceless hands urge him onward. He focused on getting his breathing under control, his heart rate down to normal, and keeping his knees from buckling. By the time they were spat out the makeshift tunnel, he had a silver space blanket wrapped around his shoulders, a finisher medal hanging heavy around his neck, a bottle of water in one hand, a paper plate with a slice of pizza in the other, and absolutely no idea where any of it came from. But he was happy. He had finished. It was over. It was done. He had done it. His legs felt like jelly. His feet were aching. Adrenaline was souring in his veins. He was coated in sweat. He felt disgusting, and his entire body was buzzing with a surreal and dizzying sensation of stopping after moving for so long. But he had done it. "Shiro!" A lure came flying out of the crowd in a blur of silvery white hair. Keith barely had time to register who was there before he was colliding with Shiro. He staggered with the weight of her, but stood firm, her arms wrapped around his neck, and she kissed him hard. Keith watched them, a faint smile on his face, but an odd feeling twist in his chest. He didn't know what it was like to have someone waiting for him at the finish. Not like that, anyway. Not someone who would run up to him and... Keith! Before he could think, there was a body crashing into him from behind. Arms wrapped around his shoulders. He stumbled forward, but strong. Lanky arms held him steady. A body pressed firm against his back. Laughter like liquid honey in his ear. You did it! Keith turned around in his grip, and Lance led him. No sooner he had turned around were their hands on his face, long, slender fingers dipping into his hair, pulling him forward. Warm lips pressing against his own, smelling pleasantly like wood chips in the ocean, tasting sweet. He pulled back far too quickly, and Keith found himself leaning after him. He chuckled, hands falling to Keith's chest, fingers resting on his collarbone. Lance was smiling wide, bright and brilliant, and Keith felt his heart stutter, chest swelling with something he didn't think too hard about. Congrats, Iron Man, he said, voice suddenly quiet, nearly swallowed by the noise around them. Had it not been for the short distance between them, he might have not heard him at all. Keith not quite in his right mind and filled with far too much exhaustion and emotions for his own good, said the first thing he thought of, I'm gross. He couldn't understand how Lance could stand to be so close to him. He knew he must smell terrible, and he felt gross. Lance only chuckled with it and took a step closer, and their bodies brushing, the space blanket wrinkling between them. Yeah, you are. I don't mind. Distantly, Keith knew he was probably grinning, but his face felt achingly numb, and he didn't quite care. He felt the paper plate and water bottle slip from his hands, vaguely hearing them land on the pavement, but his hands were already slipping around Lance's waist, tugging him closer until they were pressed tight, leaning forward to capture his lips. Lance hummed happily into his mouth, tilting his head to get even closer, arms wrapped around his neck to lock him in place. Logically, the kiss couldn't have been that great. He was sweaty, numb, and desperate. But Lance didn't seem to mind. He pushed and gave as much as he got, almost hungry in the way his lips tugged at Keith's, in the way his hands grabbed at him, in the way his body eagerly pressed against him. Everything faded into the white noise, moment all around them feeling like it couldn't touch them. The world kept moving, but the two of them stood still. Keith had spun, his knees buckled, but Lance held him up, and he couldn't focus on anything other than the sweetness of his lips.
Warning. This part contains sexual content. Read, listen, or watch at your own risk.
After a day spent mostly waiting for just moments of seeing Keith or Shiro go past, after the race, everything moved quickly. Lance lost himself in the kiss, perhaps getting a little too deep and a little too handsy in public. They were pulled apart by Pidge, who shoved him away to give Keith her own hug, followed by Laura. Everyone gave him amused looks and pointed verbal jabs. Lance laughed them all, unfazed, but Keith glared whenever it happened, shoulders slumped and pouting. It was adorable. Pictures were taken. Everyone posed with each other. Shiro and Keith, Shiro and Laura, Shiro, Keith and Laura, Shiro and Pidge, Keith and Pidge, Shiro, Keith and Pidge, Shiro, Keith, Laura, and Pidge. Then group pictures with everyone. Laura even insisted on getting a picture of him and Keith. Shiro was very disgruntled to find that the only picture Keith didn't flip off the camera in was in his sole picture with Lance. When they walked toward the transition area, Keith leaned into Lance's side and whispered that he had even managed to flip out the automatic camera that went up as they crossed the finish line. Lance laughed hard now that everyone looked back at them. They hung around for a bit. Both Keith and Shiro attempted to eat some of the free food offered. Neither of them had eaten much all day, but now that they could, they were simultaneously ravenous and unable to eat. It was hilarious to watch them both stare longingly at their pizza and nibble it in small, determined bites. It didn't take long for them to announce they were going to head back to the hotel. They gathered their bags from the transit area, said goodbye to everyone, talked for an extra 5 minutes, and they headed away from the crowded Ironman village. When Pidge and Hunk glanced at him, asking if he was coming, he shared a meaningful look with Keith before casually saying he was going to walk Keith back to his hotel. He didn't think it nearly came out casual, and he didn't think any of their friends were in doubt of what that meant. They all pretended it was smooth, though, and he was grateful for that. As they made their way down the long road toward the hotel, Shiro and Keith shuffled, walking like they weren't quite sure how legs worked. hunched in their space blankets, bags cradled into their chests. Allura and Lance casually rolled their bikes, weaving around each other in lazy circles. An empty road as they kept to the slow pace the two Atlas set. When they got to the hotel, Shiro gave the two of them, specific Keith, a pointed and conflicted look, but Allura cheerfully bid them good night before pushing him into their room. Lance walked Keith's bike into his room, propping it against the wall as Keith dropped his bag and blanket on the floor, shuffling forward toward the bed. "Oh, no, you don't," Lance said, catching Keith by the wrist before he fell onto the bed. Keith groaned dramatically, slouching and giving enough resistance to Lance pulled to let him know he was pouting as Lance pulled him into his arms. "Lance!" Keith's arms rested loosely around his waist, head dropping down to rest on his shoulder. Lance chuckled, one arm wrapped around his back and the other digging his fingers into Keith's hair and lightly scratching at his scalp. Keith hummed, nuzzling a fraction closer. "I know you want to lay down and die, but you'll make the bed gross if you lay down now." "I don't care." "Well, I do." Then it occurred to him that he might be getting ahead of himself. He pulled back slightly, looking down at what he could see of Keith's face. "If you want me to stay, that is," he said, uncertain, leaving the unarticulated question up in the air. Keith leaned back, looking at him through his lashes, hair a mess, and only a half in a ponytail that had miraculously struggled to hold throughout the whole day. He pondered, bottom lip sticking out in a look that should be illegal because it just wasn't fair, especially when he mumbled, "I want you to stay." A shiver ran right through him, from his head to his toes. His lip curled, voice soft and played with relief. "Then you should shower. You'll feel better after you do." He sighed, sound trailing off into a groan as he dropped his forehead to Lance's shoulder once again. "I don't even know if I can stand in the shower right now." Lance hummed, running his fingers through Keith's hair and gently pulling out the hair tied to let it down. "Guess I just had to go in with you then." He felt Keith stiffen in his arms. He felt the hitch of breath against his collarbone. "Gotta make sure you don't fall over and hurt yourself. I can even help you wash your back." There was silence between them, and he could feel Keith holding his breath. Then he let it all out in the soft. "Okay." Lance had to fight to keep his grin down. Not that he needed to bother. Keith wouldn't look at his face. "Come on!" He stepped back, gently grabbed Keith's hands as he tugged him forward, toward the bathroom. Keith came willingly, cheeks pinkening from a flush and a sunburn. Getting Keith out of his clothes proved to be more difficult than he imagined. The boy was stiff. Not that he blamed him. After going and going all day, stopping in a tendency to stiffen up the muscles, he removed the space blanket, letting it crumple to the floor before moving Keith to sit on the toilet, so he could kneel down and remove his shoes and peeling off his socks. His shirt and shorts were tight, which Lance hadn't complained about before, but now he certainly was. They were stuck to him with sweat, and his stiff body made it difficult to shimmy them off of him. He froze when he peeled off his shirt, letting it drop to the ground forgotten as he started at Keith's chest. The jade green fish hook rested instantly against his sternum, standing out against his pale flesh. He could feel his lips curling to a smile he couldn't quite control. Something soft and warm and fuzzy acted up beside him. "You wore it," he said, Lance's voice a lot softer than he intended. He blinked, then looked down, cheeks flushed afresh as he looked away. Yeah." "Did it help?" Lance asked, teasing as he pulled Keith to his feet. He decided to leave his necklace on. "I like to think it did," he mumbled, and Lance felt a pleasant warmth rise up his chest. He gently led Keith through the open shower, starting up the water and sent it to be warm enough to relax his no doubt aching muscles. He left him there, eyes closed under the spray, while he stripped himself. It was a much quicker process. He stepped into the shower, closing the door behind him before slipping up behind Keith, sliding his arms around his waist. The effect was instant. Keith leaned back against him, not even trying to hide the fact that he was using Lance for support. His head tilted back against Lance's shoulder, and he chuckled, nuzzling into Keith's exposed neck. His body was firm and water slick against his front, ass pressing instantly against him, and Lance felt his dick twitch with interest. He didn't know how long they stood like that, the Lance in the mine. He simply let Keith lean on him, taking in the burnt of warm spray, hands illy tracing patterns around his stomach, rising up to his chest, dripping down to his hips, teasing at the dark, curly hair, but never quite going lower. Keith was breathing heavier than what was strictly normal, lips parted, eyes scrunched close, brow pinched just a fraction. Lance ate it up, humming to a tune in his head as he gently swayed them back and forth, nose trailing along Keith's cheek, his jaw, pressing soft kisses to his ear and neck, nibbling gently on his lobe. He didn't try to hide it, the hardening erection pressed against Keith's ass. Keith didn't seem to mind. He arched back, grinding back against him. When the slick, subtle, and sweet friction wasn't quite cutting it anymore, Lance decided it was time to get down to business. He gently pushed Keith forward, making sure he could stand upright before stepping away. He didn't go far. When Keith finally opened his eyes, he took a moment to let his gaze, raked hungrily and unabashed down Lance's body before coming back up and settling on his chest. He reached out a hand, fingers pressing to the spiral pendant against his skin. He didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. A soft smile on his lips was enough, and Lance could help but press a slow, languid kiss to that smile. He watched Keith's hair, fingers digging deep in the strands, and nails scratching at his scalp. He kept his eyes closed, head to the back, humming his appreciation. When he finished rinsing his hair, Lance moved onto his body. And what a damn fine body it was. Pale skin taut over well-sculpted muscles, a lean shape, thin lips, broad shoulders, tiny scars and freckles that were like landmarks over the mouth of his flesh. His chest was mostly clear of body hair, save for the thin, happy trail that directed Lance down from his navel. Lance smoothed soap slick hands over him, fingers spread to feel and find every dip, every rise. He laid his hand around to feel out the strong planes of his back. He ran up his hands over his shoulders, his neck, his arms, before sinking seamlessly to his knees and running his hands down strong firm thighs and tight calves. Keith's breath hitched, eyes crackling open and stared down at him, half-lidded. With a smirk, Lance pressed his fingertips to Keith's stomach, gently pushing him beneath the stream of water. Keith seemed to get the message, and washed off the soap quickly. Lance watched him, staying on his knees. He spread his hands over Keith's thighs, leaning forward to press his lips to his hands, trailing kisses along to his hip, lathering his tongue along the bone. He was proud of the way Keith's breathing went ragged, and a hand hesitant as fingers ran through his hair. Lance looked up, holding Keith's gaze, his fingers wrapped around the base of his cock, smirking as he leaned forward to press a kiss to his lip before flattening his tongue beneath the head. Keith gasped, his hips twitching involuntarily. And then, without warning or preamble, Lance swallowed him down, his fingers tightened in his hair. Keith's other hand shooting out to brace himself against the shower wall as the breath caught in his throat. If he could, Lance would have smiled. His ability to suppress his gag reflex was a trained talent, mostly used to freak people out at parties when he proved he could shove a whole banana down his throat. But he wasn't complaining that he got to put that skill to practical use now. He gave himself a little time to adjust, but pushed his limits until his nose was buried in dark curls, feeling Keith's pressing against the back of his throat. He held at it for a moment, before hollowing out his cheeks and sucking hard. He heard Keith's choke moan. He felt his thighs tremble beneath his fingers, felt the fingers curl in his hair and tugging at the roots. Lance couldn't help the moan that sounded deep in his throat, reverberating around Keith's dick and causing him to echo it. He recognized the signs of Keith struggling to remain upright, and pushed him until his back hit the wall of the shower and he could use it for support, shuffling forward to reclaim his spot in front of him. He took things slow, alternating between slowly teasing him with his tongue and swallowing him down. He felt the stretch in his lips, felt the drool down his chin. He didn't care. Water cascaded down them both, making the whole thing simultaneously cleaner, messier. He focused on the task at hand and the saltiness of pre-cum on his tongue, and ignored the burn on his knees, the ache of his own cock. As he stared about was the heaviness of Keith's dick in his mouth and the noises slipping from his throat. Time lost meaning as he absorbed himself into the task at hand. Nothing but them and the warm spray of water, the sound echoing off the shower walls and around the bathroom. Loud but oddly muted and surreal. Keith's tie shook, hips rocking like he couldn't control it. Lance let him bury his fingers in his hair, let him his mouth. The tug at his hair, the tightening of his legs, and the choked gasping of his name was the only warning he got. Keith was close. He swallowed him down, second hard as Keith's orgasm hit him. He managed to swallow half of it, the rest dribbling down his chin as he pulled off him, and he quickly wiped it away. His hands were on his shoulder, fingers uselessly grabbing at his upper arms in a vain attempt to pull him up. He stood on shaking knees, the sharp pain forgotten as soon as Keith tugged him forward, leaning against him to pin him to the wall while they kissed. Keith's tongue pushed into his mouth, and he groaned loudly as Cal's fingers wrapped around his hard length. Keith made quick work of him, one hand pumping him quickly and urgently, while other's arms wrapped around Lance's shoulder. Meanwhile, Lance leaned to him, clinging to his waist for sport, kissing him like he would drown otherwise, moaning into his mouth when he could keep it up. He panted heavily, his head tossed back as Keith attacked his neck. It came in a strangled cry, body rocking through his orgasm before he collapsed against Keith. The wall, however, couldn't hold them up any longer. Both their knees buckled, legs giving out as they slid very ungracefully to the floor, limbs and bodies entangled. Water cascaded down them as they both laughed, arms wrapping around each other as they buried his face in Keith's neck. He wasn't sure how they managed to get out of the shower, how they managed to dry off and make it to the bed, but he was certain there was a lot of stumbling and sloppy, eager but lazy kisses involved. As soon as they lay down, Lance wrapped him up, curling around him and pulling him to his chest, nuzzling his nose into the back of his neck. Keith sighed, body slumping into his. Lance fell asleep with the fleeting and cliché thought that he wished his moment could last forever, followed up closely by the dread that it wouldn't.